what would be a way to coach such a person? What are some of 1, 2, or 3 things to kind of notice or work with when you're working with a person that's going through perimenopause?
Absolutely. Such a great question. It's so fascinating that it is in midlife that we start to see people, and I think perimenopause for women is one of those moments in midlife where we're like, oh, I get to reassess. Like what I've been doing in my life for the last 10, 20 years, is this even what I want to do? Was this trajectory that I chose my parents' trajectory, or is this my trajectory? Like we have these moments where like, is it time to change? When if you're working with a woman in perimenopause and they're feeling these changes happening, I think the first question to really ask is, what would you love?
Mm-hmm.
What would you love more of? What more energy, more aliveness, feeling well rested. A lot of women are coming to me because they want their health dialed, they want their energy back or at some capacity so that they can do the things that they want to do in the world. And so I always ask is what would you love? And what are the things that are draining you? Are there obligations or the things that you signed up for that it's kind of a full body no, that it's not feeling in alignment with you anymore. So getting clarity on that alignment and like what would you like more of? Because I think what you begin to realize is that for most of us, once we're in perimenopause, we're at the halfway point. And so how do we want to live the second half of our lives? Do we want to do still appeasing people, being in a self-sabotage or perfectionism? Like, what is it that we're ready to release? And then how do we get our health kind of dialed so that we start to create some of that? The other thing I think it's important to look at is, what are some things or what are some habits that help you to feel more alive? Or what are the things that when you wake up the next day, you're like, man, I shouldn't have done that. And so I think that, for instance, like alcohol is a great example. I think for women in midlife, that glass of wine at dinner on a Friday night and they wake up the next day and they're not firing all cylinders. Like maybe it's not showing up to serve you anymore. So questions that I love to ask, women that I'm working with or even coaches could ask is, what am I doing today that's helping me feel more alive tomorrow? And always with nutrition, I ask myself, is what I'm eating going to contribute to future better brain health? Like this is going to be my future brain. How do I want my brain to feel 2 days from now or a week from now or a month from now? And so very coming from the place of what is life giving, so that it's not a restriction, that it's not taking away, but just saying, are these habits the habits that I've kind of done, that I kind of got away with or that worked enough for me for a while? And when I check in, when I do a body scan, when I check in with my body, are these things really showing up to serve me anymore? Or do I need to make some pivots here? And then the other thing I love to ask women too, because I think, we're very conditioned to tend to everybody else, take care of everybody else. And so I always love to ask women like, well, what brings you joy? Like, what are some things that you can dial into that help you to feel good in your body? Like, what allows you to light up? What brings that awe and wonder to you? And then really, how do we start scheduling that into your calendar so that you start to feel more of that aliveness? And so those are the things that I really start to tap into for women, because it is the daily habits that we do every day that compound over time. And I think for some of us, we get to reassess all of that.
Okay, that's amazing. And so you're saying at that time, would it also be that's the reason why it is a tendency that career kind of starts to shift for women as well at that time? Did you say that as well?
Oh yeah, 100%. I think you look back and you think, oh my God, I had this dream to write a book, or I wanted to launch this podcast, or I always wanted to make jewelry. I mean, whatever that is, and you kind of make an assessment of life, and you think, like if there was a moment. I think the moment's right now. And so that's where I think we see that shift where women start to, again, reassess what's important as we think about that next phase of our life. And am I doing the things that are life-giving? Am I living my purpose? Am I living my dharma? And if I'm not, am I open to making the pivots and following my dreams? Am I open to healing my trauma? Am I open to really facing myself and being honest with who I am and where I'm going?
What should one be watching out for as a coach client relationship? If let's say I was coaching, not me, but a female, hopefully she's coaching a perimenopausal woman, what should they be watching out for? What are some of the things that tendency wise is a little bit more scarier or happens to be more scarier that you want to be more aware of or bring more awareness to during this time?
Yeah, I think so. Discontentment, for one. Feeling very frustrated, discontented, maybe overwhelmed by all the things you're doing, like a sense of overwhelm. And, just like maybe it's a sense of like urgency and obligation. Like you're just operating from those places. And that's just an exhausting place to, yeah, and it probably isn't bringing a lot of joy. And so if you see a lot of that coming up, and I know because I feel like I've been that woman, just kind of asking those questions of like, okay, well, um, really digging into, well, what are the things that are causing more frustration, or what are the things that are discontented? What do you feel like you have to do versus you get to do? And so kind of like unlayering that. And I guess in a lot of that could be based on belief. I think a lot of how I still operate in the world is based on belief and adaptations from when I was a child. I think for a lot of us, that's it. But I think that in perimenopause, all of a sudden, it's
all up for
facing you,
grabs, yeah.
like it's on the table, and you're like, okay, I get to go. I feel like perimenopause is a cross in the road. Like you get to go one way or the other, whether it's your health, it's your mindset, it's your career, your relationships. Like you're going one way or the other, and if you can treat it as such in that moment, then you really get to be intentional about your path. And so I think it's really digging into what's that intentionality, and why is it that you're saying yes to this over and over again? Where's the root cause around that, and what would you rather be saying yes to? That's what I would be digging into. I mean, obviously for me, I'm more health driven, but I also want to find that through line of is your health being dictated by beliefs? Like, are you running yourself into the ground? I mean, perimenopause in a lot of ways, that transition, it kind of ratchets up everything, like how you've been operating, the way that you've been, like if you were able to kind of like manage it and shove it over here, like you may have a couple more hours of sleep, you could just feel it.
Yeah.
There's no escaping. Like it's in your face, and you get to decide in that moment where you want to go. And so I think that's what perimenopause really is, how it's such a beautiful opportunity is you can't sidestep this anymore. You have to hit it head on. And from that moment, you can say, wow, you can create resistance around that and just say, I'm just going to plow through it anyway, kind of see what happens on the other side. Or you could say, okay, I'm surrendering to this. I'm going to listen to this. I'm going to dive deeper and see, is it beliefs? Is it an adaptation that I grew up with? Do I really need to be in urgency? Or do I really need to be saying yes or doing all these things that I have to do? When my body's telling me no, like, you don't even have capacity for this anymore. And then if you're able to look at that, then you have a really deep conversation with yourself, get into that deep trust of like, well, what do I really want to call in? And so that's where I think this is such an opportunity, but it kind of feels like a Mack truck moment. Like you kind of forced with the opportunity. Versus, could we have made those changes in our 30s or even our 20s?
Yeah.
It's like you could only have ran so far until you hit. And perimenopause is like, well, you've gotten this far, but now it's time to face yourself.